Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. Let's dig right into our city building discussion. Grant, we'll start with you for the first question. How should cities cooperate to achieve ambitious goals and promote interoperability with citizens as their focus?
Thanks, Connie. Yeah, this is a really big issue for cities in general. When I look at the types of things that we need to work together on, it's about understanding that we have some common challenges and opportunities as cities. Often the challenges themselves, I think, are difficult and often a little bit overwhelming to look at in isolation. And when we actually go out there and have those conversations and start to look for partners, whether they're other cities or other partners to help us with how we might approach some of those situations, I think that's really important.
Alice, do you have the same challenges?
Absolutely. When cities get together, it's true, we find so much in common. Um, and it can be a really good form of therapy just to understand that your other counterparts are struggling and are making progress on similar things. I'm really excited about continuing those relationships that we've built, especially during the pandemic, and continue to not only share our successes, which I think are super important, sharing successful stories. They could be big or small, but also sharing places where we haven't succeeded. Sharing those failures, if you will, also allows the other partners in the other cities understand, what didn't go well and what can they do differently. I think those things really can allow us to have that honest dialogue. And at the end of the day, it is the resident or a citizen that's going to benefit from a better public service.
Oh, I agree completely. I think, you know what, being authentic and sharing those lessons learned, right? That really is how we can cooperate and learn from each other. Here's another one, Alice. It's up your alley. Do you see yourself as representing digital government? And what challenges do cities face as they become digital? And you had mentioned the pandemic, it really forced us along this. So, curious to hear your thoughts on this.
In Toronto, it's something called the Digital Infrastructure Strategic Framework. And so that is how we want to use as guidance as the city builds, buys, and uses technology. And that's something that includes things that we may do ourselves or that's happening in our public realm, right? So that our residents and businesses are interacting with. So absolutely, I think people are looking for the city. And I'll be frank, sometimes residents don't make that differentiation between the city or the province or the federal government. What they are looking for is that their voices and their interests are met.
I think you're right. Citizens just view us all as government. They don't think about jurisdictions at all. I'm interested to hear your take on this one, Grant. What challenges do cities face as they become digital?
So it's quite a complicated picture that's evolving, and I think that's one of the main challenges that cities and just in general we face is the evolving nature of the realm. Um, the opportunities are they seem like they can be endless, but the reality is they have to be grounded in actual outcomes. And so I think cities are working on they're at different levels of maturity with regards to having those foundational elements in place. The framework that Alice talks to is a very significant step forward for Toronto in the context of working with its citizens, working with its businesses, working on a global setting with partners as well, so that there's an opportunity for us to be talking in some context and working together in a way that we can exchange information and ideas and opportunities in a framework. It doesn't mean all the issues are resolved or solved. What it means is we have a way to talk about it.
So, Grant, you talk about evolution and frameworks. I'm wondering, how are we keeping up with innovation and investment moving forward to ensure we have vibrant cities?
I think within the sort of the Canadian context, we we have to understand that we're not everywhere is the same. So we're often comparing ourselves, benchmarking ourselves, looking at other jurisdictions to understand how we can improve, which we absolutely need to keep doing. But we also need to understand where we're unique and where we have opportunities to sort of leverage our unique position, whether it's in a certain sector or with our citizens, with our businesses, regionally, locally.
Very great points, Grant. I'm curious, Alice, what are your thoughts on the investment and innovation and how we achieve vibrant cities moving forward?
Innovation is going to happen in the in the ecosystem overall. The city is not looking to be that proverbial red tape to wrap around innovation and make sure we're pulling it back. What we're trying to do is create an environment where it's that clarity, right? This is what the city is looking for. Here are our 6 principles. Here's what we expect out of equity and inclusion. Here's what we're expecting from economy, society, and environment. And that way, the innovation that happens isn't then thought about in the public realm and maybe pulled back by public discourse. And one example I'd like to give is around just these sidewalk robots that were on city streets here in Toronto, and it's a great innovation that many cities are trying. But what the innovation didn't have is the proper public discourse around what does that mean for accessibility, what does it mean for wheelchair users. And so we believe that having this framework, having a good way to think about it, like Grant mentioned, allows us to solve those issues ahead of time so that innovation can actually prosper.
Oh, that's so true. And you know what? Cities are about us, the people that live in them, right? Technology is just that enabler. I'm curious, Grant, what's your take on this about the investments?
So just to give a bit of context, where I'm situated now, it's with the Toronto Seniors Housing Corporation. So this is the social housing provider in Toronto with a focus on seniors only, meaning our tenants are low income and they're 59 years and up. And we have about just under 15,000 tenants in 83 buildings. And, one of the things that and many of them have vulnerabilities and face different challenges as they age. And our goal is to help them to age in place in comfort and in dignity. And, one of the things that we experienced during the pandemic, which I think all of us at some level, is the interdependence or dependence on technology became even more prevalent. But when we explained that we needed to have the opportunity for our tenants in whatever way we could to be connected with their families, connected with their friends, connected with their medical support and their teams digitally. And we were able to get that. And that allowed us to open up and bring in partners to help. And we did during the pandemic to help teach people how to use devices, help people get access to devices. So this is really the tip of the iceberg, though, as to what's really required. But it really demonstrated for us the importance of working with partners.
So, Alice, I'm going to reframe the question a bit. And I'm sure you've got more to share. What resilient infrastructure and resources are needed to meet current and future consumption?
From a digital perspective, we've learned a lot over the past few years as we come out of the pandemic, and what we've learned is that there is indeed a digital divide in Toronto. Grant's talked to you about some of the people who are living in the seniors buildings and some of them experiencing vulnerabilities in different ways. And so when you look at the actual infrastructure in the city, we are one of the best connected cities in Canada for sure. And so it begs the question, what is driving this digital divide? And so, of course, we're looking into that and we've done a lot of research. And when it comes down to it, income and poverty is a big factor in driving that digital divide. When we think about digital infrastructure, we're thinking about all those different things, both the resiliency in the actual in what's in that tube, in underground and going to our buildings. And so from that perspective, we're looking at when we are building new buildings in the city, when we are in charge of revitalizing buildings and neighborhoods, how can we embed digital infrastructure in at the front end rather than an afterthought, right? So rather than thinking after you've built a park, oh, should we have free public Wi-Fi here? Think about what the community is looking for. How can we make that really a space that where people can just be and be comfortable and use the city space to enjoy that quality of life we've been talking about.
So, moving forward, I'm going to shift gears a bit here. The next question we have is, what tech-driven city building initiatives are you working on for connected cities? Grant, you want to go on this one?
Yeah, so I'll give this a shot, Connie. A big issue, for example, in our community right now and this is not unique to seniors or Toronto seniors, but just broadly is the diversity of our tenants. So when you look at the diversity, almost half of our tenants don't speak English as a first language. And this becomes a huge challenge when we're trying to work with our tenants and communicate to ensure that they understand and feel comfortable as to what's happening. And then broadly looking at accessibility, because this is another sort of aspect as people age, their sometimes their accessibility requirements will become more significant, and some of those accessibility requirements are known, and some of them are seen, and some of them aren't seen. But it's just sort of being responsive to that. So, these are areas I think from a technology perspective, there's an opportunity that we may be able to help, spawn or foster some discussions with others. Beyond just, Toronto seniors. And I think there's an audience and an opportunity that may help with city building in other ways.
Oh, that's awesome. I imagine, Alice, you have similar challenges with languages and accessibility. But what other tech-driven city building initiatives are you working on for the Connected City?
So, from a society perspective, you may have heard about City of Toronto launching a 311 app. So, this is something that's really transformed the way we run our business and intake information. But we also see it not only as a tool to get information from residents, or if you're like me, trying to figure out when is it a recycling day or is it a garbage day, to which bins to take out. But it also allows that connection, and I really think that it also goes further to build that trust and confidence in city services when you have something that tells you the information you need to know in a way that you're used to. From the environment perspective, I want to mention, we have done a lot in terms of Transform TO, trying to lower the city's greenhouse gas emissions. And one great example I love is using wastewater energy for heating buildings right here in the city. So one example that's been a great success is the Toronto Western Hospital. The University of Toronto is now looking at more of these projects. And it just goes to show you that innovation doesn't mean doing a whole new thing somewhere. It means let's see how we can do things differently in our own footprint right now. And the last one I want to mention is more on the economy side, which is the Transportation Innovation Zone right here in Toronto. So it's on the Exhibition Place. And so it's a way for incoming technology to test some things out in a real life environment, with 4 different seasons. So it's quite a powerful tool to build the economy right here in Toronto, so that we can actually test innovations on our grounds, literally in our grounds.
Oh, these are great examples, great stories we can take with us and share. Thank you. There's excellent stories. I'm going to shift the focus even more on our citizens with the next question. How are you adopting a mindset that prioritizes citizen customers as the common good? Grant, we'll go to you first.
Understanding what's actually going on in the broader sort of context of our communities, and not looking at the city of Toronto or the city of anywhere as necessarily a uniform place. There are communities, there are individual aspects, there are different needs and issues and opportunities in different places across the city. So it's about engaging citizens in an effective way. When I look at what we're doing in Toronto seniors, we're actually fairly new, but we're trying to bring our tenants into different initiatives. So right now, for example, we have started, we call them quality improvement initiatives, and we're working on how we can improve pest management, which is a key issue that our tenants have been mentioning. And we're working on a second one around safety and security, which is another key issue, and a third on staff and tenant relations. So we've set up joint teams between staff and tenants, something that maybe hasn't necessarily been done in the context of delivering the types of things and working on the initiatives together that we're working on. So we're actually going through that right now, working through a process to bring together really the key stakeholders in all of this, the people that actually receive the services and the people that help to deliver the services, but working as a team. So that's one aspect. Another thing we're going to be doing is actually developing what we call a tenant engagement model, or a model for how we're going to engage our tenants, or more broadly, you could look at it in a citizen context as well.
Excellent. You know what? I'm going to wrap up the panel with one final question for both of you. What are your plans to stay competitive? Alice, I'd love to hear from you.
We think we can stay competitive by just being very open about what we're about, right? Um, we have now a council adopted digital infrastructure strategic framework. We have a process in which the public can continue to give us input on what kind of digital city they want to see us build. And that's what we think is going to set us apart, because there will be no question marks around what Toronto is about from a digital perspective. And that's really going to attract, I think, people, because I think what we got is pretty great, as well as making clear, where we're going, the path that's going forward.
Awesome. You know what? Toronto's always number one for me. So that's a great, summary of how you're going to stay competitive. Grant, same question. How do you plan to stay competitive?
One of the things that we're working on now, and this is something that the city more broadly has already been working on for many years now, but in our new sort of world in Toronto seniors, it's establishing a focus on how we're going to measure success and really being clear about how we're going to measure outcomes, and then actually measuring them, and then understanding how that, what they're telling us and whether it's making a difference in the broader impact. And that impact could be something that we don't control, but it could be something that actually is an impact and an improvement for the city as a whole. So, for example, on our service model, we're looking at how we can actually deal with people aging in place comfortably and in dignity. But, there are impacts on other aspects of the healthcare sector, for example, or you look at ambulance calls, and you look at police calls and whatnot. There are other things that we can do in our buildings or with our tenants, programs that we can do and supports we can bring that will help our tenants age in place more successfully and actually work better or support the other aspects of the system within which we all live.
Yeah, what a great outcome, right? This is, fantastic to hear. And may I say, this was a great discussion, a great city building discussion. Thank you both so much.